This is Northrop Auditorium. It's a Sunday afternoon, a winter in 1977. The month is February, and it's the 13th. And in front of me is a man of graciousness and worldliness. His name is Andy Kirk, and I remember the clouds of joy, Andy. What a pleasure to sit in and hear your music recreated. How about for you? What was the feeling?
It was wonderful, beautiful. One thing impressed me, the fact that we had some young ones in here who were not around in the 30s, but they were playing like they were in the 30s, you know. They had the feeling.
Well, just having those younger people out there feeling it and sensing the great conceptual ideas that went into the music and the tough working hours to set those arrangements up was something, wasn't
It
it?
was, certainly was. And I realized that they had something to go through to take these off of the records, you know.
Well, how many, for example, how many arrangements did you have in the Kirk book when you were doing the one-nighters from Duluth to Hibbing to St. Paul, Minneapolis, all the way to New York, and the Trianon in Cleveland and places like that?
Oh, approximately 70 or 80. Uh,
And of course, that meant how many hours in terms of arranging and.
oh, I couldn't, I couldn't figure that because to make one arrangement takes a few hours, you know, unless you're very, very fast or, you know, very used to doing it, you know. Mm.
Well, the reason I asked you that is because so many in the audience who listen don't realize what it takes to put this kind of an orchestra together as opposed to a symphony or a chamber music.
Right. Well, sometimes it takes hours a night. Now, like the things that Mary Lou did, I used to go by her place. She was married to John Williams. John would be asleep, and she'd be sitting in a bed like an Indian with her legs crossed, writing arrangements for the band. And sometimes she'd stay up all night. But she loved it, and that's the reason she did it, you know.
Well, certainly there were great stars in your band, and of course, Mary Lou Williams is one. And when did you first meet Mary Lou?
In 1929, I had a man on piano by the name of Marion Jackson, and Jack Cap came to town with a crew to make some, or listen to some bands and to make some recordings for Brunswick and Vocalion. So we'd set up the date, you know, for the audition. We were playing at the Playmore Ballroom. But Jack didn't show up for some reason. So I spoke to John. I said, can you get in touch with Prelude? We called Mary Lou Prelude. She was about 18 or 19 at that time. So he said he'd call her, and she came on down. And she did fit, you know, and from then on it was a question, how am I going to get rid of her? I can't.
Well, what most people don't realize is Mary Lou Williams really represented women's lib in the musical business, didn't she?
That's right.
Along with Lil
That's
Armstrong.
right. That's right, because I never thought of using a woman, you know, on a piano, because I always thought of having a man. Not that I was against a woman, because I'm married to one. I was married to the same one I got now then, you know. But there's rough times on the road, you know. And we went through some rough ones, you know, on those one-nighters because we didn't have the accommodations that we should have had, you know. We just weren't for us. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that she certainly must have been a very resilient person.
Yes, she was. And, well, she was young, and she didn't mind staying up all night, you know. She did it. She contributed a lot to the band.
Who were some of the other important names, ranging from Fats Navarro back to Faye Terrell and others?
Going back, well, Fats Navarro and Howard McGee, they were the bop era. And Dick Wilson was in between, you know. And I had Lester Young. I had Buddy Tate on tenor and Ben Webster. And you mentioned Thompson, who went later with Lunsford. He was with me. Oh, let me see. There were so many.
Andy, do you still bring your band out?
Sometimes. Yeah, I don't. Not very often. My next date is June the 20th in Carnegie Hall.
Well, I hope that we can join you there.
Wonderful, wonderful.
It's a pleasure talking with you, and what a thrill to have you on hand to hear some of this music recreated.
And I enjoyed it just as much as you did.
Thank you. Well, it was a pleasure sharing it with you. I'm talking with Andy Kirk, famous for the Clouds of Joy, those Decca Blue records, you know, the 78s that used to spin. And perhaps you're old enough to remember putting nickels in jukeboxes and playing Until the Real Thing Comes Along. Andy Kirk, a pleasure.
Pleasure's mine.
Thank you. This is Northrop Auditorium in Minneapolis.